who is a college student, and we all know college students drink like crazy, many of them do, and there's a general idea that this is an okay thing to do. This is a young man with a real anxiety disorder, and what's underlying his drinking is a real need to medicate this anxiety disorder. So in addition to what he thinks is just going out and having a good time with his friends, really what's going on top of that is that he's trying to medicate a problem that actually causes a rebound effect, so that he becomes more anxious as a function of drinking more, and it circles around, and he's got himself in a bit of a pickle.
Does the use of illicit drugs make it more difficult for you to make progress with the patient?
Yes, absolutely. The rule of thumb in psychotherapy is that you need to have somebody clean and sober enough that they can use psychotherapy well. Therefore, someone needs to either be abstinent or at least on the road to abstinence, so that you can go ahead and use methods that are useful. Now, with that said, oftentimes it's hard to tease out one problem from another, so that you may need to be addressing both at the same time. And if someone has some issues with anxiety or a very stressful work life, and for example is using alcohol or drugs to manage their stress, you're not going to be able to just deal with their alcohol issues without also dealing with the stress in their life. So you have to do both together.
Have you ever had somebody come into your practice and say, "What is happiness? Can you define happiness for me?"
I do indeed. I have that, as well as I have people who come in and say, "I'm not happy." And that's my goal for therapy, is to become happy.
What is happy?
Well,
from a professional perspective.
Well, that's an interesting question, because from a professional standpoint, there's actually an entire new area of psychology that has become a very hot research area and is very popular now, and it's called positive psychology. And it's the idea that one needs to look and focus not simply on what the problems are in one's life, but also what strengths one has in one's life. And so the emphasis is on increasing the positives that you have. A number of theories of depression, for example, focus on not simply taking away the things that aren't good, but adding in things that are good. And so when people define happiness, part of my job is to help them look around and say, okay, well, what do I need to put back in my life that's been missing?
When somebody says, "I want to be happy," there is the unspoken corollary that they don't want to be unhappy. Now, what is the role that unhappiness plays in the natural order, Darwinian, natural selection theory? I mean, what we have as an organism is supposed to come from years and years and millennia, or hundreds of thousands, whatever, for mammals, to come up with an organism that could survive in the workplace or the real world. What is the role of what we call unhappiness in the kind of natural order of things? Is there any role?
Well, let me try to give you a little perspective. I think that one approach to looking at this issue is to understand that one can't be happy unless one is also unhappy. You can't have one without the other.
Like sweet and sour in the Asian food market?
Yin and yang sort of idea. That
yin and yang, sweet and sour, light and dark. What does one mean without the other? Inside, outside, all that.
And so when we work with people who are really very distressed and they say, I just want to be happy, one of the things I work with is helping people accept that happiness is not a continuous state, but an ongoing transitional thing. I'm happy in the morning when I get up and the sun is shining and I've got a nice day ahead of myself, and I'm sad when I hear a news report that there have been more casualties in Iraq. And so none of those are what we call states. They're rather traits, meaning that they change over time.
What is the principal difference from the perspective of a professional therapist between treating a young person who's, as an example, 10 versus somebody who's 65? What's different?
Well, there's a lot that's the same. So let me start there. The things that are the same are, as I said, you need to have a relationship. And one of the factors that we know is very effective in psychotherapy are the issues of the bond between the therapist and the patient, regardless of the type of psychotherapy that we try. So one needs to have to be able to have a rapport. And you need to be able, for example, to relate to children. If you're going to work with children, you need to be able to relate to older individuals in their life if the person's older. And so one of the differences is being able to understand the life experience of a 10-year-old versus a 65-year-old. You're living very different lives that way. A good therapist is very, very good at letting your patient teach you about his or her life, so that a 10-year-old tells you what it's like to be 10, a 65-year-old tells you what it's like to be 65. And if you've been doing it for a while, you get a sense of what life is like in general for someone that age.
Is it your perception that life is fair?
My perception as a psychologist is that that's a relatively irrelevant question. That fairness isn't really the matter very much. That whether something is fair or not,
it is.
It is. And so, for example, if I have someone in complaining about being treated unfairly by another, but being treated unfairly by a boss, for example, is a beautiful example. He's mean to me, he does this. And you can say, well, that's not fair. And you're absolutely right. But whether it's unfair or not, that's the way it is. And you've got the choice of either leaving the job or learning how to deal with a boss who's unfair. That's part of the work of psychotherapy, is doing something that's going to work, that's going to make you feel better, work better. And the question of whether it's fair or not is really a bit outside my bailiwick.
Okay. Suppose that we have viewers today, which I'm sure we do, who are thinking, you know, I might want to visit a psychotherapist. How do you make a wise first step into finding someone that might be a good choice for you?
A very good idea is to consult your physician, your primary care physician, because often she or he will have some either psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers that they're familiar with and refer to frequently. It's not the kind of thing that you really want to do by just opening a phone book and picking a name or picking an area that is closest to you, because the fit is so important. You want to make sure you get somebody who's well credentialed, and that's why I talked a bit about some of the requirements for, I didn't mention social work, but a social work has a master's in social work. You want somebody from accredited programs, you want somebody licensed in New York State. Anyone can call themselves a psychotherapist, and so just somebody who hangs out a shingle wouldn't be something that you could do. But in general, then you give the person a call, make an appointment, and that's it.
Very good. Well, it's been a great show learning more about psychotherapy. Thanks so much for joining Medical Matters. See you again soon. For more Medical Matters television shows, go online to medicalmatters.tv.